Hello, this is Father Louis Scurti with Buddy Fortunato again. This is another continuing episode of our Italian American series based on Buddy being the publisher of the Italian Tribune. Now, in the Italian Tribune, we were talking off camera, there's always a section about food. Now, the food could relate to the season, Easter, Christmas, Mother's Day, Cena la Festa della Mamma in this particular episode, and then they do food segments on the regions and the specialties. It makes you hungry just talking about it. But that got us talking about growing up Italian. So, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Montclair, right here.
Okay.
Born and bred in Montclair. But talking about the food section, our food section, Father, is a terrific food section.
Absolutely.
And people cut those recipes out all the time
Right.
and mail them all over
It's the
all over the
truth, it's the
country.
truth.
And it's Marion who deserves the credit for that. She
Marion
does
is
the
his wife.
research and she
Oh, really?
great cook. Great
And
cook.
she must have some garden. I've seen pictures of it.
She does a great job.
Great-
Great
excellent.
job. But we were talking
Yeah.
about my childhood, and I indicated to you, Father, I grew up here in Montclair in a home, three-family house, and my grandparents owned the house, and we lived there until I was about 6 years old. And when I would come down to visit my grandparents, as soon as I would open the door and walk in, I was greeted with the smell of a De Nobili cigar, boom, right in the face. I would get
Boots.
that. And I would go over, as we were taught, I would go over to my grandfather to give him a kiss, and he would be reading his Il Progresso newspaper, and he would have that little cigar, that little De Nobili cigar dangling from his mouth. And I would give him a kiss, and I said to myself, I'll never smoke
Now,
a cigar.
did you keep that promise?
Well, I'll tell you the story. So then I would walk into the kitchen to see my grandmother, and from time to time, she would have stretched out on the table, as she was preparing at the kitchen table, tripe.
Yes.
And I said, Grandma, what is that? And she told me what it was, and I said, I will never, ever eat tripe. Never eat
Get
tripe.
Bouchard.
Yeah, never eat. Disgusting. So, whenever
Well, it explains to the audience what tripe is.
it's the layer of a stomach, the animal's stomach. In fact, that's a whole conversation we can have later, Father, about the culture,
Authentic.
food culture
Right.
in Rome.
Oh.
On how they call it the fifth quarter of the animal.
Interesting.
The butchers would divide up the animal
Right.
into 4 quarters and be able to sell those parts of the animal.
Right.
And they would keep the rest for their family. And a whole food culture developed from the lungs,
Fascinating.
from the intestines, from the stomach, and so on.
Fascinating.
But I was saying to
Right.
so when our family gathered, I was the oldest and the first grandchild, and I would sit next to my grandfather, and he took great pride in the wine he made.
Did he keep it on the floor? At the bottom?
Well, he would keep it,
Yeah.
at the table, yeah, that's where it was, within reach.
Absolutely.
In the what we would call the Biancoline.
Oh, yeah,
remember?
yeah.
I have to tell you a
The
story
glass,
about that
yeah,
later
yeah.
too.
Biancoline is the Clorox bottle.
right,
But
the
it had to be
bleach-
clean.
the bleach.
And it was glass.
So he would give it to me, and it was the worst. Believe me, it was the worst. And for me to be able to drink it, I would have to cut it with some soda.
Yes.
And he would get the biggest kick out of the faces I would make, and I said to myself, I will never drink wine.
Oh,
never
Madonna
drink
mia.
wine.
You have a lot of lies in your
So
family.
now we fast forward, and tripe.
Yeah,
Love tripe.
absolutely.
It's amazing, and now we we have a tripe dinner. We just host it. We don't make any money out of it. And it started with 3 guys.
Really?
Now we're up over 100 people attend this dinner. We have it at Mama Vittoria's in Nutley. And
The next one I'll be there.
you got to come. And the cigar.
Oh,
Today, the people that own DeNobili Cigar
right.
are friends of mine. They're in Scranton, Pennsylvania. They advertise with us. And I smoke cigars. And the wine, I have to confess, Father, I like wine.
You've become a connoisseur.
So I'm a product of my heritage.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
am a product
Absolutely.
of my heritage.
But interesting story because it mirrors growing up. On Sunday, we'd eat at my father's family's house. My grandfather would have that big gallon of wine, and he'd always, because he didn't want my grandmother to know that he was giving me, he would pour it in, and I'd drink it with soda.
I have to tell you a story. Do we have time for
Yeah, we have
for a
time.
story?
We have time.
I was in first grade, and we go to school. I go to school this particular day, and Miss Johnson was my teacher, first grade. It's amazing. I remember my grammar school teachers. I can't remember my college professors, but I remember my grammar school. So
Strong impression.
yeah, it's amazing. So she says to the class, today we're going to discuss how many liquids we can name. Now, I sat on this side of the room. She started on that side of the room. By the time she got to me, milk, soda, water, wine, juice, every liquid you could think of was mentioned. And I'm sweating and I'm trying to think of what the heck liquid can I say? And I said, Biangoline.
Oh!
And she looked at me, Miss Johnson.
Yes.
What is Biangoline?
Yeah, yeah.
And I tried to explain that my grandmother and my mother used this thing in this big bottle, this big gallon, and I could not explain to her what the heck this stuff was. But I knew that my mother and my grandmother used this Biancoline.
And she kept it under the sink.
Yeah, right.
And Biancoline is a Italian variation of whitener. It's
Bleach.
Bleach. What our parents used to call from Clorox or bleach, the Biancolina. So, did your mother give you money to go buy a bottle of Biancolina? And
Well,
bring
the
it
man
home?
would come around
Oh, you were
in the truck.
sophisticated.
The
Whoa.
man would come around in
We
the
got
truck and sell it.
5 cents for that jar. Because
Really?
we used to return the deposit.
He would come around like the knife sharpener.
Oh,
father.
yeah. Go with that for a few seconds. What do you remember? Because I think we grew up in different neighborhoods, different towns, but the same culture. Who were the people who came around selling on Saturday mornings and during the week?
Well, you had the guy who would sharpen the knives
Yes.
and things like that.
And they would get your attention by yelling in the street.
Oh, yeah. And I lived on a dead-end street here in Montclair. So he was able to spend a lot of time with very, very little traffic, in the street, yelling and servicing the people on the street.
Right.
It would be the vegetable and fruit merchant. He would come around. We had, at that time, the milkman, and the hot days, and they were all 3-family houses on the street. And the hot days of summer, we were little kids. As soon as I can see him now with his rack of milk bottles running up into the houses.
Right.
We chose that time, Father, another confession, to jump into the milk truck and take out
The ice.
the ice.
Right.
The ice. And we would sit on the curb chewing
the ice. Oh. Did your milk have cream on the top when you took off the top?
those bottle, right.
My grandmother would go berserk if I would be the one to get it, and I would lick off the cream because Yeah, you're supposed to shake it so it would mix with the milk. I would lick it off and shoot one after me. And tripayo, remember? Tripayo? Oh my
right,
God.
yeah.
So the vegetable men, the meat men, the milk, they would all come to the streets in their wagons or trucks, and people would go down
That's right.
and shop.
It was easy.
This is pre-Amazon. This has been Father Louis Scurti sharing some Italian stories growing up in our culture, which is wherever you are. And let me hear from you, Father Louis Scurti at hotmail.com, and log on to the Tribune to get more information about Buddy Fortunata and the Italian Tribune. Thank you for joining us.